You know, some people say hunting is a sport. I don't necessarily agree with that, but what I do agree with is you can take hunting and practice like it's a sport to make you a better hunter in the end. Let me explain. What I'm talking about is how often do you see pro football teams, and when they're practicing for a big game, they make that stadium practice like it's the real thing. They pipe in noise, they put in extra elements in practice to simulate a real game. Same thing with bow hunting. What I like to do is practice like I'm really hunting. I'm gonna wear the clothing that I'm gonna wear when I'm going hunting. I'm gonna have all this scenario around me the same, whether I'm hunting out of a ground blind, a tree stand. I wanna replicate that as much as possible so when the real time comes, I'm gonna be better prepared. So first thing, this week I'm hunting out of a ground blind. I'm gonna practice shooting out of a ground blind, try to make it as realistic as possible. I'm gonna wear the clothes, especially the jacket that I'm wearing. I'm gonna use my sever broadheads in practice mode so they're flying the way they're gonna be flying when I'm using the real thing. I'm gonna put on my True Glow release. Now, one thing I would recommend that you do is if you're bow hunting in cold weather, today it's really warm where we're hunting here in Wyoming. I'm not gonna be wearing gloves out of this blind, so that's how I'm gonna practice. It can make a difference if you have a glove on underneath this release on how you shoot. So practice that way if that's the way you're gonna be hunting. So hunting out of a ground blind is a little bit easier than a tree stand and a little bit more difficult all at the same time. Out of a ground blind, the biggest thing you have to be aware of, obviously, is your shooting windows. You cannot have those windows too small. The other thing you need to realize is when you're at full draw, although I can see my target, I can see my deer right there, I need to understand that my arrow is not in line with my eyeball. My arrow is actually lower. So I have to look at that and see how I have clearance. Clearance is a big thing in ground blinds. Until it happens to you, and it's happened to me several times, is that in the heat of the moment, a deer comes out, I can see him fine, and I start moving here because, okay, the deer's tracking through. I'm coming to full draw, and I might move a little bit. So what we're gonna do is give ourselves ample space below my arrow shelf. The other thing is the seat. That seat has to be positioned. Now, things happen. You know, that deer could show up here, he could show up out here. It really depends. I need to have the bottom of this ground blind clear. I don't want my backpack in front of my feet. I don't want it to the side of me, because if I move this chair and I set it on top of a backpack or something, now something happens, I spook the deer, or I just don't get the shot off. So the first thing I want to do is percentages. Percentage-wise, if a deer is going to show up, what's the highest percentage where he's going to show up? I'm going to predict that he's going to show up out of this window. So I'm going to position my chair in the best space so I can shoot out this window first. If it happens out here, I'm gonna have to adjust on the fly, but I have to keep those things in mind as I'm preparing before I go hunting. Hey, as with everything in life, the difference lies in the details. Practice these little details for bow hunting and you're gonna be better off this season. Massive hemorrhaging. That's what kills a deer when you're bow hunting. It's not about trauma, it's not about force, it's about cutting quickly, efficiently, and razor sharp. Sever broadheads, I've been using them for several years, you probably know that. I really like them. Number one, they're built well. Number two, they're really sharp. And number three, they cut really big holes. Now they offer 3 different ones here, and a question that I get a lot is, which one should I use? They have 1.5, 1.7, and 2.1. What that means is the cutting width of that broadhead. The 1.7, obviously a little bit smaller cutting diameter. This is a little bit more stout. A lot of crossbow hunters like this because of that stoutness. The ferrule is really solid. The 1.5 inch. Now this one is, again, it's a smaller ferrule. It's a smaller cutting diameter. What is this good for? A lot of guys like it for long range shooting. Some of the guys that shoot a lot of high weight compounds, they like this for antelope hunting, for long range deer hunting. It's also a good broadhead for low poundage bow hunters. The 2.1 is going to cover you if you're shooting a lot of weight, 60, 70 pounds on a compound bow or a crossbow. It's going to create a large cutting diameter. As with anything with bow hunting, it's all about preference, your broadhead style, and especially your broadhead construction. What I would recommend, going with a highly constructed broadhead that's razor sharp and that cuts big holes. It's going to make for really efficient hunting.